All right, and we are live. This is Hank and Brendan. We are going to be talking about email marketing deliverability. Brendan, I appreciate you joining today. We're just going to give folks some time to come in. If you joined us right when we started, go ahead and leave us a comment where you're from. So, Brendan, I know we're both dealing with working from home, so this would be an interesting event today. Usually we're in a nice cozy office doing a webinar together, right?
Soundproof room, no children around.
Yeah, what's funny is now the way the office is, it's really meant for webinars and audio recording, but the background there doesn't look as good as either of ours right now. It's all like foam audio proofing and stuff, soundproofing. But this is going to be awesome today. And hey, is there anybody on that's checking this out? Let us know where you're from in the comments. We're going to get started in a moment or two. Just give some folks a moment to get in. All right, St. Paul, Minnesota. We got Judy. Welcome, Judy. Cool. And this is kind of a newer platform we're trying. It's called StreamYard. It allows me to stream to both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. And there's a bunch of cool little features. I'm looking forward to trying that out today. And this is going to be a little bit kind of informal because we're all working from home these days. Some of us are mandated to do that, right? I don't think it's across the country yet that it's mandated to do that. But I have 2 kids, 2 dogs, and a cat. So therefore you may hear one or more of them at the same time. And Brendan's got some young children. You never know what might happen on his end, but we're excited to talk about email today.
So apologies in advance if you hear a 1-year-old. It's right about nap time. So my lovely wife is handling that duty.
Awesome. Yeah, tell her she doesn't have to work that hard. We can understand. All right. Is there anybody else on? If you're on, let us know where you're from. I'd love to see people. I think it was last week. I had people from all over the world on a webinar we did. I think we had 823 registrants and about 400 showed up. And we had people from all over the world. That was awesome. Seeing people come together. We thought we'd do a Facebook Live and a YouTube Live today to give you the opportunity to see our faces, interact with us, share us your comments and your questions. Sherry from Sacramento's on right now. Keep sharing where you're from if you're new on the stream. And if you have any questions along the way, comments, anything, let us know. What's really cool is I can actually share any kind of content that I feel we need to on the screen to show other people, just so they know. So if you have something to add, if you're an email marketing expert and you're on today, just checking to make sure we know what we know, go ahead and share your information. We'd be happy to share that out, because that's what we're here to do today, is provide value to you, the audience, to help you make sure your emails continue to get into the inbox with what's going on with COVID-19 right now. And a lot of what we'll say, especially towards the end, we're saving the best till the end, is during these challenging times, what do you need to be doing? And more importantly, what shouldn't you be doing with your email marketing to make sure you're getting engagement, number one, and number two, getting into the inbox, because what you do now may help or hurt you later, right, Brendan?
Correct. Yep. Unfortunately, spam filters don't take current events into account. They just look at data points. So it's really intelligent during times like these to think about your email sending and who you're sending and what you're sending. You don't want to have messaging surrounding this pandemic impact your normal marketing efforts later down the line.
Awesome. So let's jump into the deck. I think we gave people enough time to get started and start watching us. So again, if you're new, let us know where you're from. We got Judy from St. Paul, Minnesota. We got Sherry from Sacramento. If anybody else is watching, let us know where you're from. Let us know what you do. Let us know how you're dealing with working from home. And we'd love to hear all of that. And my name is Hank Hoffmeyer. I'm an author, speaker, podcast host, and I pay the bills by working as a senior manager of client success for the J2 Martech brands, which is Campaigner, iContact, Communicator, and SMTP, all email brands. And I love helping people learn about email marketing, and I've been dubbed the digital marketing infotainer because I like to make marketing fun and successful. Hopefully we'll check both of those boxes today. I'm joined by Brendan Matthews. I've worked with him for a long time. He is deliverability. I call him an expert. He might not call himself that, but he lives and breathes all things deliverability related. He manages our abuse desk which she could tell us a little bit about, and helps investigate, diagnose, and repair issues with your email marketing campaigns. Make sure you're getting the best ROI. The abuse desk isn't there to punish you. It's actually here to help you make sure that you're doing the right things so that you have the best engagement when it comes to your emails. He lives with his wife, Jen, and has 2 small children, Sydney and Colin, as you can see here on the slide. He's a car nut. I've heard him talk a few times about cars. We've chatted a little bit. And you like to cook for friends and family. And you're probably mostly cooking for your family these days because of the whole social distancing, right?
Yes, exactly. But on the plus side, I get to try out a lot of different things that I've been researching on YouTube and Food Network and stuff like that. So it's been doable and fun.
Great. Well, we appreciate you coming on board today. I know this is going to be a topic that is of interest to a lot of people, but also daunting. What do I do? What do I don't do? Hopefully we'll answer those questions. So if you have questions in the stream, go ahead and ask them. We'll be happy to answer them. I want to take a step back, and before we start jumping into like, what do you do? What do you not do? Why is email important? To me, email is more important than ever right now because a lot of people are working from home and they're probably in front of their computer more. And even if they don't really, quote unquote, have a full-time job, they're going to be in front of their devices more and they're going to check their email. Email marketing is 40 times more effective than any other channel out there. And that can be pay-per-click, it can be social media, and even direct mail. That's one reason why you want to use that. And 61% of American workers say email is important to what they do. And not only are they checking business emails, they're looking for emails to buy a product or service or communicate with friends and family. And if you're a B2B marketer, let us know in the comments. I definitely want to know if you're B2B. 83% of B2B marketers use email marketing and say it's very important to getting their results. So again, email marketing is king. You can get up to a 3,000 ROI or 3,000% ROI from email marketing, and the average order value is at least 3 times higher than social media. And something I didn't put in here and I just thought of is right now everybody's on social media because they want to feel good, they want to read the news, and they want to hear all these stories about what do I need to be doing and not doing with COVID-19. Now is the time to get on social media, either organically or paid, and drive more email subscribers, get more people on your email list, run ads or just run posts and say, hey, we have exclusive content on email. Here's how you get it. So you should get about $38 to $42 in ROI for what you're spending on email marketing. We actually had somebody call in, I think when I first started, Brendan, they said, hey, I just purchased your $50 plan. Where's my $42? And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, I thought you were going to give me $42 for every like $38 they spend or whatever. And I was like, well, that's not really how it works. What we're saying is it's a return on investment. When you send out an email, you should make money off of that email. I thought that was hilarious.
I've never heard it that way. That's an interesting take on.
Well, as marketers, you got to be careful what you say, right? Because people are going to hold you to whatever messaging you put out there.
Very true.
All right, guys. Let us know how we're doing so far. Let us know if our audio is coming in through. If you're new to the stream, let us know where you're from. We want to give you a shout out. And I guess, Brendan, do you want to take this here talking about, hey, first thing you need to do is gather subscribers, and what are some things that you need to be doing and not doing, right? When it comes to email subscribers and having maybe a form on your website.
Right. And just to, before we start all this off, before I jump into that, Hank, what I did want to make sure that we mention is that, in the context of this webinar, we're talking about collecting addresses through permission-based means only. So obviously there's methods for collecting addresses that sales teams will use to do outreach, but for bulk emailing, especially in the context of iContact, everything needs to be permission-based, meaning that contact has to have said, here's my email address, please reach out to me. That's really, really important because that keeps you compliant with spam rules and things like that. That's not to say cold call emails don't have their place in the world of sales and marketing, but they don't in bulk sending. So I just wanted to preface that.
And shout out to Lori Bruns. She is on Facebook and she lives in North Carolina in Hillsborough. Hillsborough. I actually know her. She's a friend of mine. She is a productivity coach. If you need anything, search for Lori Bruns or go to loribrunnsllc.com. She can definitely help you out. Appreciate you being on today, Lori. Hopefully you're going to let us know what you know and know about email marketing along the way. All right, so let's go ahead and flip this over. So What is it? Why is it important, Brendan, to adhere to your branding when you have a form or when you're collecting email addresses?
Well, people want to know what they're signing up for, and it has to make sense to them. If it's not clear what they're signing up for, then it may not be clear when they get that first email who you are. That's a big one there. You want to make sure that people, they see a form, they know it belongs to you. It's not going to be confused with a different type of ad or a pay-per-click. And then, as I mention all the time to customers, you want to make sure that the locations are where, they're going to make the most conversions. You get pop-ups, slide in, static. What we tell most folks is always have a form that's static, maybe on the footer or the header of your website, so it's always visible. But then you can use pop-ups or slide-ins, at the right timing to try and get a conversion. Usually, you want to stick, what I tell folks is stick a different offer in something like that. That way, it pops.
And I guess a pro tip too is just be careful how big your pop-ups are, because on a mobile device, if they cover most of the screen, Google's actually going to penalize you with on your SEO because they feel like you're trying to hide the content on your site and you're just trying to get the sign up. So make them a little bit smaller, especially on mobile. All right. So Brendan, when I have a form, what should I be asking for? Should I ask for first name, last name, email address, business name, business address, last year's taxes, favorite color, and maybe some more information?
Yeah, last four of the social and their middle name, their mother's middle name too. Really, what the key is to ask for the information that makes sense and that you need. You don't want to create too much friction and anxiety with too many form fields. That makes it a really, arduous process for a contact to give you their information, and that can lead to, them abandoning the form. For most cases, a first name and an email address is plenty to start. You can ask for more, but not make it required, or you can gather more information later through profile pages, surveys, campaigns, and things like that.
Awesome. All right. So when is it okay to ask for more information?
Honestly, if there's a reason to do it, regardless of laws out there, as we get online with more things, people are very, very concerned about their personal information being out there on the internet or in the ether or whatever. So really only ask for what you need for it. Like if you're a restaurant, ask for a location or a birthday. That way they can send you, a happy birthday email with a coupon for a free meal or a free drink or something like that. But again, it's finding that balance and only asking for what's really going to be necessary for your marketing.
For me, when a restaurant asks for my birthday, I'm like, here it is. And you know why? Because they're going to probably offer me either a discounted or a free meal on my birthday. And I know that. And that's why I'll provide it to them. On B2B, I like to say sometimes you can get away with asking for more information, especially like the business name and maybe the business size,
role or title, things like that.
Yeah, and you what's great is you can always ask for first name and email address, and then ask for more information later through, say, the preferences page, with your email service provider, or through a survey, right?
Mm-hmm. Or a landing page if you have like our iContact Pro platform. You can do an email campaign shooting to a landing page to ask for more subscriber information for better marketing.
All right.
Yeah, that shows some personalization too, so you have that benefit.
Cool. Nope. Don't forget, if you're new to the stream, if you have any questions or you just want to let us know where you're from and if praises for Brendan and I, go ahead and shoot them in the comments. We want to give you a shout out and help you answer those questions. So Brendan, when it comes to capturing email addresses off of forms, there's something called ReCAPTCHA. Maybe we should talk about what that is and why it's important.
Absolutely. In my opinion, from a deliverability perspective, any form where you take information online should be protected with ReCAPTCHA. I mean, obviously, if you're using it for email marketing purposes. What we've seen in the last 4 years is a resurgence in what are called spam bot attacks. And these are malicious pieces of software that usually somebody in another country will write to cause damage. Essentially, what it does is it scrapes the internet, much like Google's robots will do, to index websites that have sign-up forms that aren't protected with ReCAPTCHA. And then they can actually inject people's email addresses directly into those sign-up forms. And these forms are owned by innocent businesses, but if they don't catch that, what happens is they end up sending email to people that didn't ask for it, because usually what a spam bot is doing is adding addresses that have been stolen or purchased from a stolen data breach and things like that. And when it goes unchecked, or if it can go unchecked for even a few months, it can really have a lot of negative impacts on your email campaigns and your domain reputation as a whole, because unfortunately what it leads to is your business becoming an inadvertent spammer. And that's obviously damaging and something we'd never want for any of our customers. So from an iContact perspective, any sign-up form that you create within our application actually requires ReCAPTCHA. And we've seen such value in the quality of contacts coming in since we instituted that policy, and cut down on spam bot attacks just exponentially. So it's been great.
Awesome. That's a good explanation. And it's important to use because you want to make sure that you're not getting those invalid email addresses or actual email addresses of people that never signed up that want to complain and hurt your deliverability, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. Another thing to discuss is, Brendan, let's just say I'm old school and I run a brick and mortar store and I don't have a computer, I don't have a tablet, and I just have people sign up on a clipboard to get my emails, and maybe they ask for first name and email address. Why is it important for me to maybe change how I do that, and what are the dangers of using paper forms?
The dangers, honestly, are data entry. And if you can't afford it, then it's just being smart about what you're doing. And if it's something where you can't really, it's not legible, or you're unsure of what's written, don't add that address, because what can happen is misspelled addresses, mostly domains, which a domain is everything to the right of the @ symbol in an email address. So Gmail, Hotmail, those things, .com. What can happen is it gets misspelled, and either that can hard bounce off your list, which can harm you, or what else can happen is those domains that are misspelled are actually owned. And they're used as spam traps to catch senders who maybe don't have the best list management practices. So those are actually called typo spam traps. So if you actually look, there's a domain called yahoo.com, YAHO, instead of YAHOO for Yahoo. This domain is owned by Yahoo, but nobody would ever use it to sign up for email. It's strictly used to catch people that don't really have great list management and have a lot of typo addresses. And it can impact your delivery for good addresses that you have at Yahoo. So it's those types of things you want to be careful. How does it look when you're a sender and you begin sending addresses to a domain that don't opt into any email? You can get labeled pretty quickly. So it's those types of things you want to avoid. If you simply can't, like I mentioned earlier, go to a digital format, then, like I said, just be very careful about anything that may not be legible to you, or there's a question about it, because that could end up hurting you in the long run.
Awesome. All right. So now another thing that you could do is use apps. Maybe you're going to a trade show or a conference and you're going to have a booth there and you don't want to use pen and paper. There's apps that you can use, or even just use Excel. But what you can do is use one that integrates directly to iContact. It's called ReCAPTCHA. And what's great about ReCAPTCHA is it actually works while it's offline. And then as soon as you connect back to the internet, it'll synchronize all your data back to whatever provider you're using, or iContact. And it's a great way to, say, take a tablet, have it on the table and let people sign up. Or a lot of times you will get the apps that the conferences provide and you scan a badge and then later you can add it. Use technology. It's there to help you. And especially if you want to get a lot of email addresses and have them type it in rather than you trying to transcribe it later, that's the best way to do it. All right. And once you have that email address, one thing you want to make sure you're doing is sending a welcome email. What you want to do is set expectations early and often. What you want to do is make sure that you're telling people, what happened? Why did they sign up, and what should they expect, right? Because you're going to help set those expectations so that you can tell them how often they're going to get the email, why they're getting an email, maybe put in a discount or coupon code in there if you want. And it helps reduce complaints. There's nothing worse than me signing up for an email newsletter and then 3 months later getting a welcome email from you saying, thank you for signing up for my newsletter. I might say, well, I don't even remember who you are. Spam, right? And you don't want that to happen. And the most important thing is it starts the relationship off right. If you send it as soon as they sign up or as soon as you get it into the system, that's kind of like a warm welcome. It's that handshake. Nice to meet you. I'm glad you signed up. Here's what you can look forward to. Don't worry, you can unsubscribe at any time if you don't want my emails, because you always want people to unsubscribe rather than mark your messages spam. We're going to talk about that soon. And actually that is the next topic. Let me bring up a question from Lori here. She's asked this early, and this is probably what we're going to get into, is she's been on and off with, I guess, sending to her email list. What's the best way to engage, clean up lists, that old emails and non-valid emails are gone, and you have a more authentic list. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about here in the deliverability section. So now we're moving into deliverability, what to do and not do. And then towards the end of today's stream, what we're going to do is talk about COVID-19 and what are some things that you should and shouldn't be doing there. If you're new to the stream, go ahead, drop us a hello. Let us know where you're from. I always love to hear where everybody's from.
And hey, if it's okay, can I just chime in on a deliverability perspective when it comes to welcome messages?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, cool. So like you mentioned, they should go out immediately, right? Which is the perfect time. It's right after you've gotten that conversion. So that's most likely to get you an open. You're top of mind, they're online, and it's a very high likelihood they're going to receive that email quickly and then open it. So number one, offer value in that message. Now we want to consider it from a deliverability and a domain reputation standpoint. This is the very first message you're sending to that person. If they open it, the likelihood of your next messages going to their inbox is much, much higher. And then that's at the individual level. Now, for the last 7-8 years or so, all of the major providers use individual data points like that and then aggregate them up to the whole to make global filtering decisions. So when the spam filter sees that the first message to most of your contacts is getting opened, that means the first message to most of your contacts should go to the inbox. So you get a boost based off that. And then when that happens enough times, that bleeds over into your older contacts in your regular marketing list. So you're improving your domain reputation, which leads to more messages going to the inbox for larger numbers of users.
Awesome. That's great information. And we're going to be talking more and more in the next few slides about deliverability, but just we need to know how email works, because you might think you could just take a list, send it out and make money. That's kind of how it works, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
All right. CASL, which is, CAN-SPAM, which is the U.S. legislation for email marketing, has fines that are associated with it if you don't do the right things. But for CAN-SPAM, which was enacted in 2003, it's a very old law. It says that you need to identify yourself and you need to provide a way for people to unsubscribe. In other words, yes, you can send to a purchase list, but you don't want to, and we're going to talk about why. And CASL, which was enacted in 2014, that's mostly for Canada, but yeah, you could still get in trouble if you send to somebody that's a Canadian resident. And then last year, you have GDPR, 2 years ago, GDPR, which is for the European Union, General Data Protection Regulation. And Brendan, if I'm off in any aspect here, please let me know. But I'm just trying to give the dumbed down version.
Yeah, you're doing good.
You actually have to have that explicit opt-in. In other words, you have to get that permission to email them. I have to be able to let you know what information I have on file for you, and upon request, be able to delete it. Now, you might say, I don't send to people that are in Europe, but if somebody has dual citizenship, in other words, if Brendan's also a citizen in Italy, I can get in trouble even though he's here in the U.S. Be careful. Then there's the CCPA, which actually was just enacted this year, and that's for California, the California Consumer Protection Act. And that one has a lot of teeth, and that one can really hurt you. And there is stipulations around that. If you make a certain amount of money, even if you're outside of California, you're still liable. There's other reasons and mechanisms you might want to look at that, because there's a lot of other states that are going to enact similar rules, and you might see one from a federal level there. And hopefully I did that kind of justice, Brendan. Anything to add to that one?
Yeah, just to add, if you're an iContact customer or a customer of most major email providers, then following their policies, and as long as you are, you're compliant with this legislation anyway. So it's not something that you typically have to worry about unless you're trying to get one over on your email provider. So please don't do that. But yeah, Hank, you hit the nail on the head. The only other provision I would add for the CAN-SPAM Act is that it also states that marketing email can't be misleading. So you can't have a subject line that says one thing, but your email content is completely unrelated to that, things like that. And, from an iContact perspective, we don't allow the use of RE: or forward: in a subject line, because every message from our system is an original message. So putting those actually makes them misleading by having them appear to be a reply or a forwarded message. So there are little nuances, but if there are questions, you can always feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to go over the particulars.
And I can understand why somebody might think RE, it's regards, right? And that's what it means. It means regards. But what you could do is just put regarding your request or something like that instead of doing RE colon.
Correct. Yeah, it's important to remember what email parlance is. So in a subject line, that's a technical specification that states RE colon equals reply, as opposed to a business letter where you're using it as a regarding. It's a technical spec, so we kind of have to be on the up and up when it comes to that.
All right, the next slide, there's something that we need to cover. It's technical. So what I want you to do is slap yourself in the face, splash yourself with some water, because we want you to stay awake through this one because it is important. It's not going to be long, but it is important to note when it comes to email deliverability, and we have some technical items that need to be set up in the back end. In other words, these are things you probably don't even know about. Brendan, I don't know if you want to go over, or I can go over this one really quick, and then maybe you can jump into why they're important. I can kind of identify what they are.
Perfect.
All right, awesome. So SPF stands for Sender Policy Framework. It basically says if you're using a provider like iContact or Campaigner, that we have permission to send emails on your behalf because they're coming from our servers and not yours. You need to go into your hosting provider, GoDaddy, 1and1.com, whatever it is, and just add a bit of text, and you can either use their help function or contact them. And you're going to put a line of text, which we can help you with. Or actually, iContact does it automatically. We do it for you. But other providers, you might need to go in and just say, iContact has permission to send this email, or Campaigner has permission to send this email. And this is something you set up and you forget it. And when your recipient server receives it, says, oh, this is from iContact, not hankhoffmeyer.com. Oh, wait. They have permission. It's okay. It's kind of how I would explain that. Mm-hmm. Then we have DKIM, which is Domain Keys Identified Mail. Simply, this is another string of information you put on your domain. And that says that the message has not been altered in any way since it left the sending server and was received by the recipient server. It wasn't hacked, hijacked, or changed in any way. And then last, we have
just the easiest way that I use to explain it to people is DKIM is like decoder rings. So we send out a message, and part of it is encrypted. And when somebody receives that message, they take that encrypted part and look for a special key. And they find the matching key on your domain and use it to unlock the locked part. And as long as that locked part matches the unlocked part, they know that it's an authentic message that hasn't been taken during transmission and altered. So think decoder rings, and that's exactly what it is.
I don't know why, but that reminded me of Cracker Jack boxes when you get the little toys
yes,
on
them. That's what I think of every time.
All right, so we have DMARC, Domain-Based Message Authentication Reporting and Conformance. That is something that you set up, and what you're going to do is tell servers that get email from your domain that, hey, if SPF and DKIM is not set up, what do I need to do with it? Do I need to do nothing and just let it through? Should I kind of hold it, or should I just not accept it at all? Was that acceptable?
Absolutely. Those are the three directions. So it took... DMARC is the newest form, and it took SPF and DKIM and then gives you as the sender control over your own domain and telling these receivers what to do if it's suspicious or not yours. So that was kind of a game changer. And it's optional, but Gmail just recently changed their sender guidelines back in February or so. And they specifically state you should publish a DMARC policy. So I tell people, Gmail is the 800-pound gorilla in the email world. When they say jump, you say how high. So if they're saying you should have a DMARC policy, you should have a DMARC policy. If you're not really familiar with what any of this is right now, don't worry. There's a whole ton of information out there, whether that's, you can Google it, or you can go to our blog where we have some really great information to share as well. But it's something that I would recommend for bulk senders, especially if you're in the B2B space. If you're just sending B2C and it's all free mail at, gmail.com addresses or hotmail.com, you should still do it. But if you're sending to business addresses, you should absolutely do it. And you'll see why on the next slide.
Awesome. Yeah. And we're here to help. Even if you're using another provider, we won't make fun of you. We'll try to help you out the best we can. So if you need some help, just let us know. So Brandon, go ahead and talk about the information here.
Sure. So if you're not familiar, a few years ago, Gmail and Microsoft started taking their consumer-based email and making it available for businesses so that you can have professional email to your own domain rather than having to use their free services. And they call those G Suite and Office 365. Makes it super easy for even a one-person operation to have a professional email address. What we noticed was that for folks that take advantage of proper DKIM, at least for an iContact customer that's using our custom DKIM process, and then use a published DMARC policy, we noticed that for B2B email, average open rates were more than double at Office 365 and 1.5 to 1 3/4 times what they were at G Suite. So think about what that could do in terms of your ROI and conversions if you take 30 minutes to do some DNS work and your open rates double. It was pretty powerful when I saw those numbers. So in terms of, like I said earlier, I would push anybody doing B2B email and even regular bulk email marketing to B2C. Just take advantage of this. It's 30 minutes of setup and maybe a couple of calls to a few support teams if you're lost, and it's just you're done and you can get double the open rates. So there's not too many things you can do in the world of marketing where it's quick and you can see improvement like that.
Awesome. All right, so let's go to this slide. And what I want to do is I'm going to show our faces a little bit more prevalent here. Let me see. I think it's I'm playing around with this and it's not working the way I want it to. So I guess I can't do where two of us are minimizing the screen. All right. So we have something called spam filters. In other words, when the recipient server receives an email, they're going to look at it and say, should we send this to the inbox? Should we send it to the spam folder? I like to correlate this to a credit score. When you pay your bills on time, your credit card bill on time, it raises your credit score. When you don't, it lowers it. Same thing with email marketing. When you send an email, it's being graded. In other words, if people react to it into a positive manner, that raises your credit score. So in a chat, I know there's a few of you online. Go ahead and let me know what you think some of the positive aspects are. Let me know as many as you can in the chat. I want to hear what you think positive things that happen to an email are and see if you catch all of them. And then also go ahead and put some negative aspects. And I'm going to mention a few, but I'm going to leave a couple out on purpose. Some of the good things, which anyone should get, is going to be an open, right? An open, a click, a forward, mark is important. Then there's another one I'm going to mention, but I'm waiting to see if you catch one. Come on, guys, in the chat. I want to know what are some negative things that happen to your emails when they're sent. A bounce, right? That's one. I'm just waiting for some of these comments, hopefully, to come through. Maybe everybody's multitasking. The other one might be unsubscribing. And maybe the last one would be nobody's chiming in here. It's like school, right? It's like we have to call on students, right? Lori, what's a negative thing that I didn't mention that can happen to your emails when it goes out? They can mark it as spam. That's another one.
The most known. Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Well, I'm probably going to mention what you're thinking too. On the negative side, one of the most important things to look at is what people are not doing when they're just not opening your email and ignoring it. And a lot of people don't think that's negative, and it is. And we'll talk about that. But the other positive one is called TINs. This is not spam. If somebody actually goes into the spam folder, pulls it out of the spam folder, it actually is a high form of engagement. And especially with Gmail, it's going to say, hey, maybe this person does want this email. And keep in mind, a lot of these filters are user specific and sometimes not as general as you think.
And we'll touch on it in a little bit, but yeah, that is the most powerful signal you can send to a spam filter from an individual inbox is marking a message as this is not spam. That's going to tell the spam filter, okay, this is relevant, this is wanted, and we're going to start delivering into the inbox for that user. If that happens, if you have a lot of messages going to spam and a lot of users do that, that's great because then the filter learns. If you have messages going to spam and people aren't doing that, they're leaving them there. A filter is a machine that just uses logic that, okay, working as designed. So very important to let people know that if they didn't get your message, check their spam folder and mark it as not spam, move it out, however their email client works.
Awesome. When it comes to some of the negative items, there are something called detractors or the bad things that happen. With your complaint rate, you want to be at 0.1% or 1 per 1,000. And you might think if I send 1,000 emails, it needs to be 0.1% of that. When in reality, it's per ISP or for like Gmail, it needs to be 1 per 1,000 of your Gmail subscribers, 1 per 1,000 of your Yahoo. So make sure that you're breaking it out and looking at it per ISP. Your unsubscribe rate should be about 5 per 1,000. And keep in mind, you'd rather have people unsubscribe than mark your message as spam, because it's actually less punishing than a complaint. And then last, do bounce rate or the invalid email addresses, especially if they're transcribed wrong or somebody providing a bad email address, or forbid you bought a list or something. You want your bounce rate to be less than 1% of your send there. Anything to add on to that, Brendan?
Yeah, just that, a lot of people ask, well, what is a high bounce rate? What we've seen and what data has been made available in the past from sources like Return Path is that a bounce rate of even around about 8% can lead to about 40% of your messages going to the spam folder across, the average provider. So it's very important to keep those rates in mind. A lot of senders don't have that knowledge that a hard bounce to an invalid or inactive address can be as damaging as a spam complaint. We'll talk about this more on the B2B side, but it can be more damaging, and you'll see why in a few minutes.
And what we want to do is make sure that we're cleaning our list and keeping it well. It's kind of, not, I don't know if you need to practice social distancing with your email subscribers, but what you want to do is make sure you're cleaning your list of disengaged folks. Why is that important?
I think this touches on what Lori was asking earlier. And we mentioned it a bit, but for the last 7 or 8 years, all of the major providers have gotten a lot more advanced with their spam filtering. And it's not just, certain keywords and things like that that'll trigger it, or a text to image ratio that, 10 years ago, we always had to play around with from a design standpoint. Really, it's tied to the individual user. How do they react with your messages or similar messages, and then aggregate it up? How active is your list? If Gmail is seeing that you're emailing, once every week, but you have, 30% of the contacts at Gmail that you're sending to 4 times a month haven't opened a message in a year, then you're not doing yourself any favors from Gmail's perspective, because a large portion of the contacts that you send to there, your email is not relevant. So what that leads to is, for folks that maybe don't open as many messages, those messages will start going to spam to see if they're relevant. And what Gmail's filter then is looking for is that user to mark it as not spam. And if they don't do that, working as designed. So you can imagine, as that snowballs and as more people drop off your list or stop engaging, then more messages start going to spam. And you really want to avoid that. So you want to consider the health of contacts and whether or not that person who's regularly received email but hasn't opened or clicked anything in a year, are they really doing anything from a positive aspect? Are they giving you any ROI in your program, or could they possibly be dragging you down, especially if there are high percentages of those on your list? Rest them. You can always try a little bit later as you're sending to more active contacts and improving your domain reputation. You can always send, after a couple of months, a different type of offer or something that's different from your normal messaging, because the normal messaging eventually led to them kind of dropping off as a real subscriber. And if you do that after resting them, then you do have a higher chance of inboxing for them and getting them to reconvert or at least unsubscribe and get off the list, so that you're no longer sending to them. If you just get no engagement or anything, even after presenting a better offer and resting and doing all of those things, just consider them dead weight. I know there's obviously lead costs associated with getting these, and pay-per-click costs and things like that. But you have to consider it in the grander scheme of your entire list and whether or not that individual contact is worth anything anymore.
A lot of folks that build a list or have a list, they are scared of trimming that list because they say somebody's going to buy from me at some point. I was actually talking to somebody the other night, and they were saying that they sell like marine batteries. And how often would you buy a marine battery if you had a boat? Maybe once a year. They're saying, well, we want to be there when they need it. And we talked about targeting and using automation to actually just make sure that you hit them at the right times, and then also just provide valuable information along the way to keep people opening so that they don't fall into that disengaged list. The one thing I always recommend is, okay, if you do go ahead and just delete everybody who's been on your list for a year and hasn't opened in a year, I'm gonna pat you on the back. I'm gonna shake your hand, send you a thank you card, right? Because that's awesome that you did that. You can always add them back. That's one of the best things about it. But I always say run a series of maybe 1 to 3 emails trying to win them back. The first one would be something like, "Are we breaking up?" ? Because I don't know about you, Brendan, but if somebody's breaking up with me, I want to know why, and I'm going to open that email, right? And maybe that one has an offer to stay in the fold, or just asks, "Hey, do you still want emails from us?" And hopefully people will react. And the second one's going to say, "Are you ghosting me?" Right? "Why aren't you opening my emails? And here's a stronger offer. Please stay on our list. We want to send you emails." And then, a third one is, "Here are the divorce papers," right? And then you commit to that and you actually sign them, seal them, and get them off of your list. You may not want to repurpose those subject lines, but it's just really a way to drive the point home. And with almost any platform, especially like Contact, you can set up those series of 3 emails to be sent as soon as somebody meets that criteria. Been on my list for a year, has not sent in a year. Let's send this email right away. Wait 5 days, send this email. Wait 10 days, send the last email. And then after 20 days, you check and see if anyone did not open any of them. And then you just remove them from the list. It's automating it. It's almost like having a Roomba.
Mm-hmm. And to go back to your example of the marine battery, that's a perfect example of, knowing your audience. They're exactly right. If they just buy a marine battery, they're not going to be in the market for probably a year or more. So should that contact be getting a weekly sales email, or should they be at a different cadence? So maybe in every other month, maybe here's some tips on cleaning your boat or storing it for the winter, preserving your battery. Maybe they can offer a trickle charger instead of a battery. Those types of things. It's applying good marketing principles. I think sometimes that email, because it's so easy and cheap, people forget about that. But like any good marketing channel, you should know your audience and your messaging should be tailored to that audience.
Right. And that's kind of what we spoke about. You actually gave me a couple more tips that I can go back to that customer with and let them know about trickle charges. Didn't think about that. So thank you. I see you have new folks on the stream. Actually, there were a couple new folks on the stream. But if you're new, let us know where you're from. And if you have any questions, let us know. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit and let's talk about results. Don't just send emails to send emails and hope you make money. You need to analyze what you're doing. And that also helps you look at your deliverability. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? One of the first things you can do is look at your metrics, right? And Brendan, I just put together what I feel are industry agnostic averages for some folks. And your open rate, a healthy one would probably be around 20%, and clicks maybe around 5%. Unsubscribe rate, we talked about that 5%, and I already mentioned that, so I let that cat out of the bag. Your bounces at 1%. But what I want you to do is benchmark what you're doing. So if you only have a 10% open rate right now, think of that as your benchmark and strive to make improvements to make sure you're getting more. First thing, especially with Lori, what you can do is actually do that list hygiene, do that series of 3 emails, and clean your list, because maybe you have a 10% open rate now, and all of a sudden it jumps up to 15 because you remove the dead weight, and that's your true benchmark. And then go from there and say, hey, in a month I want to be up to 12, 2 months I want to be up to 15, and just keep moving up. And on this page, these are a couple of different industries, that you can use to compare yourself against. But if you're not here, which you might not be, go to smartinsights.com, and they have a full list of all the industries. I did not want to blow your eyes out with very fine rows of data that had everything on there. Just go to smartinsights.com to make sure you're finding out which ones matter for you. All right.
Just to chime in, these are, in my opinion, ideal things to stretch for. I would say that, there's a lot of factors that go into this. The size of your list, your frequency, the health of your list, so many different things that if you're nowhere near this, don't worry. You have to start somewhere. But once you start analyzing, then you can improve. It's so much easier to have a 25% open rate when your subscriber list is 500 people than when it's 250,000 people. It's important to keep things realistic as well, and for your business specifically.
Let's talk about domain openers versus non-openers. This is something that I thought of years ago, and I think, Brendan, you actually helped me develop a report on this, where what I wanted to do is look at all the domains I send to. And if I go to the next slide, if I have abc.com and I have 23 people on there and I have 0 opens, that probably leads me to believe that I'm having trouble getting into that domain. In other words, maybe they're not even being received, or all of my emails are going to spam. The one in the middle, the 123.com, is the most interesting because maybe I have 3 subscribers and there's at least one open maybe over a period of 6 months. That leads me to believe if I can get to the inbox for one person, there's not what we call a deliverability issue. It's really an issue maybe with filters or just people ignoring my email. And an example.com is kind of like an average thing, right? Not everyone at a specific domain, especially Gmail, is going to open all of your emails, but you want to know if people are actually opening. And Brandon, it's probably good. It's just popped in my head. It's probably good to talk about the difference between delivery and deliverability, right?
Absolutely. So delivery, and it's very sneaky. Delivery is only the messages accepted by the server. It has nothing to do with where that message ends up. It's either was it rejected as a bounce or was it accepted? That's delivery rate. And marketers can get, email providers can get a little tricky with how they say that. So we actually we removed that from our marketing stuff. Deliverability is messages getting to the inbox, not just the message being accepted by the server, because a server can black hole your message and never deliver it anywhere. They can send it to a quarantine at the server level. They could send it to the spam or the junk folder at the individual user level. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, delivery and deliverability. It's important because you'll see email service providers saying we have a 99 or 100% delivery rate. That doesn't mean that 100% of your emails are going to get into the inbox. A lot of it is on your domain. And going back to what I said about the credit score, that's on your domain, folks. Of course, the IPs you send from maybe like iContact or whatever provider you're using, those IPs do have a reputation, but it's only a certain percent, like maybe 10 to 20% of that whole grading system, where your domain has that 80, 90% of the score. And it's based on what you're doing. Are you sending emails to people that want them? Are they engaging, or are they ignoring it, marking it as spam, unsubscribing, those good and bad things. So you want good things to happen to your emails. I'm reading, I'm writing an article, a blog article actually, on 3 things you could do to keep your subscribers engaged when they're distracted, which a lot of people are right now. And it's going to hit home because a lot of people think that they were doing the right things, but they're not. And if you don't do it now, you're going to lose a lot of subscribers. Mm-hmm. All right. Let me try to get to the next slide. All right. I actually went forward one by mistake. So let me go back. All right. So if you're B2B, if you're sending to business domains, keep in mind that there's something called a feedback loop. And with private domains, they do not provide that. These slides are acting up on me.
Yeah, I'll touch on that real quick while you're figuring out the slide. So I mentioned this previously with B2B sending. Like Hank mentioned, if you send to a Hotmail address and they mark as spam, email providers have what's called a feedback loop. So that interaction of marking as spam is recorded, and then that contact is removed from your list, so you can't send to them again. That's the feedback we get. We remove from the list to monitor that feedback. So private domains don't have those for the most part. They're technical, they're costly to set up, and so forth. So when somebody marks as spam or junk at a private domain or a business domain, you don't get that feedback. You don't know anything about it. All that happens is that message is no longer going to the inbox for that user. So very important to consider list hygiene with B2B sending now. 10 years ago, that wasn't the case because each person had their own server. But like we talked about earlier with G Suite and Office 365, where tons of businesses are going there, those products use spam filtering just like Gmail and Hotmail do. Same commercial-based filtering. So although they won't send you the spam complaint, it's tracked on their end and can hurt you. So continuously sending to folks is really bad if they're not engaging, because that address could have marked you as spam and you don't know it. And then you continuing to send them is going to hurt you for any other address at that domain, or again, going up to the global level. If it happens enough, it's going to hurt you at that entire provider. So you may not inbox at Office 365 at all, or at G Suite at all. So consider those things that are, a lot more relevant to B2B senders than they used to be.
That's important to note, because people think that, the only way to know if somebody doesn't want their email is by getting an unsubscribe or a bounce, but ignoring it. And then also people marking as spam, you didn't even know it, can hurt you. And you just heard it today from 2 folks talking about deliverability. So Brandon, when it comes to bounces, which we said that they're negative, in other words, if you send to, well, let me back up because there's soft and there's hard bounces, right? When your email's sent out, if it's received by the recipient of the server, it's just received and it's delivered. It can bounce as well. In other words, the server can say, hey, there's no one here with that email address. And that's what's called a hard bounce. Maybe it was somebody that worked in an organization and no longer there in the IT department, took the email address out. What they're going to say is this does not exist anymore. And then a soft bounce just means maybe there's a temporary service issue and it just didn't get through because the server wasn't up. Or maybe it's the user's mailbox is full and they need to clean it out. The soft bounces don't really hurt you. The hard bounces do, because you're sending to people that don't exist. Especially if you purchase a list, you're going to have a lot of bounces on there, and it's going to hurt you really bad. Because if you have a high bounce rate, say with Yahoo, what they're going to do is say that you're an irrelevant sender and start damaging your reputation more, and then sending more of your emails to spam folder. What else is there to talk about when it comes to bounces, Brendan? And also what I have on the next slide is some bounce codes, and why is it important to look at bounce codes?
Yeah, let's bring that up because that's a really good visual. It's important to look, number one, because the recipient server is not going to lie to you. At least they shouldn't. If they're not going to accept the message, they'll send you a bounce code with a diagnostic, which is your explanation. They're going to tell you, hey, we are not going to take this, and here's why. So that can be for any number of things, like you mentioned, a mailbox being full. And I would just preface that if you see those types of bounces, those folks should be removed from your list. In most cases, that means their email address has been abandoned, because think of how much storage you get in a typical Gmail or Yahoo address. It's gigabytes. So to fill that up and have it go unchecked, you can safely assume that nobody's checking email at that address. But there are other things too. So there can be manually blocked by the recipient, which means they may have marked you as spam and their email program is now rejecting your messages. It could be that they're the individual user, but their email administrator who runs IT for the company decided to block the sender. It could be an IP issue. It could be, we see this a lot, spam content. So something within the message, typically this is going to be related to your links, is not liked by that filter. It may be keywords, but we see that less and less now. It's usually the reputation of you as a sender, or of the links or the domains in the links that you're including in the message. But pay attention to those. And, like I said, if you see ones where inbox is full, stuff like that, or they're manually blocking you, that means they don't want your mail. So sending to them is not doing you any benefit. It may not harm you from a pure reputation standpoint, like a hard bounce would, but it's not doing you any favors at that domain if they're blocking you and you continue to send. So just bear that in mind, and do pay attention to those, because they give you valuable feedback. Hank, I think you're muted.
I was playing around with the portal here, and I removed my video to give you time to shine. But we got Tim Robbins from North Carolina. I actually know Tim. He's with Today Creative. If you have any video editing or production needs, hit him up to Today Creative. Tim Robbins, thanks for joining us. When it comes to your email marketing, deliverability, what I want to do is kind of start wrapping it up by talking about some critical items. And we're going to get into COVID-19 items next as well, so stay tuned for that. And one of the first ones is avoiding traps and blacklists. What a spam trap is a recycled email address that providers use to catch nefarious senders. Let's say I have an AOL email address, which actually I have two, and I actually still use them. But maybe I stopped using that email address and I haven't used it in a year. AOL might turn around and start sending me emails saying, hey, do you still want this email address? Do you want to use it? And if I don't reply, at some point they're going to say, well, we're turning this off, and they do. And they'll throw a bounce code, like Brendan was saying, talking about bounces, and say this email address does not exist anymore. You might, and remove it. And some providers will automatically remove that. But if I don't send during that time frame, maybe I bought a list and that email address is on there, what happens is it gets turned into a spam trap. So AOL turn it into a spam trap. And if you hit it, you're going to get in trouble. In other words, you send to that, you might get into trouble, especially with like iContact. They'll contact us, AOL will say, hey, your sender XYZ hit one or many of our spam traps. We need you to take action. And, there are some consequences to that. And especially it could add you to a blacklist, right? Where you're put on this list that these servers or providers, they subscribe to say these are naughty senders and you may not want to accept email from them. And you don't want to be on a blacklist, because if you're handling blacklists on your own, if you have your own sending infrastructure, it takes a long time to get off of there. It does take us a little while, but we have ways to make sure that happens as quick as possible. Anything to add to that, Brendan?
You mentioned like purchasing a list, but it's also important to think about older lists and lists you haven't sent to, because that was just a great example of an email address that aged out, went inactive, and then was repurposed. So we see this a lot. We're seeing it now, which we're going to hit on the next slide, but we see it a lot around Black Friday as well, where everybody suddenly finds that list of contacts that they hadn't sent to in 3 years and wants to get out an email blast. And inevitably what happens is they get bad results. Usually because there's some inactive addresses on those lists that have since been turned into spam traps. So, digging deep for that extra sale actually harmed your overall email marketing program. So those are the things to think about, not just for purchasing or harvesting data, even for opted-in data. Always consider the age.
And even though it might not happen now with all the social distancing, but I always say, if you go to a store and you come outside in the parking lot, somebody in a trench coat comes over and opens up his trench coat and says, "Psst, hey, email list, 5 million subscribers, $50. I know it's hard to kind of not buy that because it's so cheap and there's so many email addresses, but just don't do it, because it's going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. We already went over this, but make sure you're setting up those technical items, SPF, DKIM, and then we did say that DMARC is kind of optional, but we recommend doing that just so that you're fully secured. And also, if somebody was to hijack your email address and start sending spam out on your behalf, DMARC actually helps you stop that.
And it gives you reporting, which I didn't touch on. So you can actually understand where all of your mail is coming from, and then get reports on mail that fails that isn't from you. So you could see where it's coming from and take the appropriate action. So it's a really powerful thing.
Right. Yeah, and I've looked at that because you'll get those alerts of people that are trying to send from your domain, who are sending from your domain. Hit us up if you have any questions about those separately. We can always help you out with those technical items. But I always like to say, make sure you're sending quality content. There's nothing worse than saying, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, buy from me, especially if you have the same offer. I worked with a gentleman who sold eyeglass frames, and I wear eyeglasses. I don't know how many of you wear eyeglasses, but how often would you buy eyeglass frames? Once a year. He would send an email every week with a 10% offer for new frames. And if I wasn't ready to buy, there's nothing in there for me to say, I want to engage with that email. When I'm ready to buy, I'll just look for one of his emails and open it and know I'm going to get a 10% off. Maybe if he increased his offer and had some discounts a little bit more every now and then, maybe I'll buy another second pair, or maybe a pink pair for summer or something to make me stand out while I'm on stage speaking. And also maybe if you put information about how to clean your glasses, how to organically improve your vision, and other things, it's going to make you want to open that more. And Brendan had the example earlier about if you sell marine batteries or marine accessories, if you sell somebody a battery, what you can also do is try to sell them a trickle charger. So maybe point out, lens cleaning cloths and kits, all those types of things. And we were actually able to dramatically improve this client's email campaigns by adding more value, more content that was relevant to the subscribers than what he thought he should be promoting and putting out there. This is what I want to push. This is what I want to promote. I said, we need to take a step back and look at it from the subscriber's point of view. What do they want? And he was happy. It took us about 3 or 4 months, but we turned things around.
Yeah, and a good example of that is a car dealer that I worked with at iContact, and a car dealer that I worked for prior to iContact, not doing the right things. Think about the buying cycle of a car. In the US, it's like 3.5 years, but anywhere from 3.5 to 7 years on average. If somebody just bought a car from you last month, are you going to send them this month's specials? Probably not, especially if they purchased another car from you last year. It's all about, like we said, knowing your audience and sending what's valuable to them at that time. It's, easier said than done, but that is the key, is the content quality of it and the frequency of it as well.
Right. I bought a Kia a little over a year ago, and I get the service reminders discounts on oil changes, then they're different. And then I think once so far I've gotten, do you want to trade your car in for a newer model? Because I bought a couple year used model. Mm-hmm. They're actually, their cadence and their content's actually pretty good as compared to Hyundai. I know they're the same company, but this other Hyundai dealership just kept spamming me with, do you want to trade your car in? Do you want to trade your car in? Hey, do you want this other car? Do you want this other car? And full price oil changes. Yeah, I always want to pay full price for an oil change, right? All right, so I don't know if this is what everybody was here for, but this is going to be information about best practices to keep your email campaigns in the inbox, especially related to COVID-19, what you should and shouldn't be doing. And Brendan, I know you put a lot of those on there. So the first ask is, should this message be sent? Is email the best medium? And this is in relation to COVID-19, right? What were your thoughts behind that?
Real life experience. So I was working with a customer last week who had a big issue with hard bounces and spam complaints. And when I took a look at the message, what they thought they would do is send to their entire database, no matter when that person opted in, and so forth. So when we examined the messaging to see, what factors may have led to folks marking as spam in high numbers, all the message said was check our social media accounts for COVID-19 updates. Is that a valuable email? In the context of the spam complaints and the bounces that they received, which were well in excess of what ISPs want and well in excess of what our thresholds are, knowing that now future marketing messages are going to have less success because they sent out a message that said check our social media. They could have just updated social media and their website, and most folks will do that and then send that message to maybe their normal subscribers who are less likely to mark as spam or bounce out in high numbers. So always consider that. Is this message appropriate? Is it really necessary? And is email the best way to deliver it?
So Brendan, if COVID-19 was affecting me, say I was a retailer, and it was going to increase the amount of time I ship a product to you by 3 days, should I just send that to everybody and just say you should expect a 3-day delay in your shipment?
You could, and you'd have the same issues that I just mentioned. And we've seen that as well. So it's being intelligent about your messaging and figuring out the best medium. If these are contacts that haven't ordered from you in the last 6 months, are they likely to order from you, knowing your business model, obviously, during this quarantine, during this month where they may not even have income? So consider that as well. Consider your audience, consider what's going on in the world around them. If they purchased in the last 6 weeks or they are a frequent purchaser, obviously you want to get the messaging out to them because you know that this could impact your relationship with them. If this is somebody that hasn't made an order, you haven't sent an email to in a year, is it valuable knowing that there's inherent risk in sending to that contact?
Awesome. All right. So what sort of impact will this have on our marketing efforts after we get through COVID-19?
Like we talked about through the whole webinar, bounces, spam complaints, high unread rate, high unsubscribe rate, all of those things factor into your deliverability. So one message or a series of messages about COVID that has really poor negative metrics and not so great positive metrics to counterbalance them adds negative reputation to your sending domain. So that follows you along like that credit score analogy that we always talk about. That's going to follow you until you've done enough good and acquired enough good data points to counterbalance that. And depending on the size of your list, the content that you have and the frequency that you send, that could take a long time.
And make sure to be on the lookout for that blog article that I'm still finishing up. 3 things you can do to keep your subscribers engaged when they're distracted. I think it's something that we've all should have been looking at and doing, but if not, then you should be doing it now. And that leads to, how do you stand out in a sea of sameness? Right now, you're probably seeing a bunch of subject lines in your inbox that say COVID-19, right? I don't think you need to be using that in there. What you should be doing is standing out, being different, using emoji that's relevant to your subject line and your content, personalizing the subject line, and maybe just don't use COVID-19, but use something a little bit more related. Just say, challenging times, we have an update for you. and then use, a related emoji or something like that. You want to make sure you're compelling those folks to open that email rather than say, oh, it's just another COVID-19. I think the last one I opened was just so bland. It was the logo and just like a letter from the CEO. It was just all text and then his signature at the bottom. And to be honest, I didn't even read it.
Right. Consider your own inbox. How many of those have you received and how many of them have you read? Or is it just filler that eventually gets deleted? And again, deleting an email without opening is a negative data point.
Right. Now, I could see airlines using that because it is really related to what they do, and it's affecting. I was 2 weeks ago. I was actually supposed to be in the Bahamas, Cancun, and Jamaica, I think, on a cruise, and that just never happened. We wanted to know how COVID-19 was affecting our payment. Right? Were we going to get a refund? Were we going to be able to have credit for future use? So therefore, that is something you want to put in there, but do more than just say, COVID-19 update or something. Just put something in there. How does COVID-19 affect our daily operation or something? Make sure it resonates and tells people what they're looking for. And don't forget to use the pre-header, which is an extension of your subject line, the first bit of text in your email to kind of be that extension of your subject line. And we already talked about sending content of value. Make sure that whatever you're sending is valuable, informative, helpful. You want to help people through this. Use animated GIFs to make people feel better. Use video because video right now, a lot of people are consuming that. Images, use compelling images. And be human in your messaging and use emotion. People want to relate to you. Like Brendan and I started off just talking about hey, we're working from home and you may hear a dog bark, a baby cry, a kid yell, but actually we didn't hear any of that today, which is great. But that could have happened, right? And we said that up front, and we wanted to be human with you.
Exactly.
All right.
And I noticed Tim's comment.
Tim is saying those emails that just get deleted in general don't generally clear because you don't care about hearing from CEO from a hosting company. Say like, okay, so if I use GoDaddy, I don't care about hearing about from the CEO there, right? It was funny as I saw a post on LinkedIn from somebody I'm connecting with. He said, "I didn't know all these companies really cared about me," joking around. Because what's going to happen after the fact? Are you going to hear from all these leaders, these companies that you normally don't? No. We just want to know what's going on. We don't care who it comes from. And there's just so much going on with COVID-19 right now. But with that, I think that is our last slide. What we want to do is open it up. We want to see if you have any questions. We want to answer those questions. And it doesn't have to be related directly to deliverability. It can be anything with email marketing, subject line length, use of video, what time of day to send. Do you have any questions? We want to open it up to you. Did you already eat, Brendan, or are you going to eat after this?
I'm going to eat after this.
I had like a brunch earlier because I knew we were going to do this at lunchtime, our time, and I'm going to probably grab something after this too. But folks, if you have any questions, drop them in. We're going to give you a couple more, like another minute to drop those in there. And if you don't, we'll go ahead and end today's stream. Next week, I actually have the Better Business Bureau coming on to talk about scams and how you can avoid them and maybe not be related to a scam. So that's going to be a good one. Nice one, Tim. I see the smiley face. I'm glad I waited a second to read that one. Let me bring this one up so everybody can see this here. Where's the best place to purchase an email list?
Tim, there's lots of places you can do that. Just do me a favor and only use your own personal server to deliver to those addresses, okay?
And make sure you're getting a good deal. Don't get ripped off. Awesome. Trying to think of anything else that we should let people know about, but I think that was kind of comprehensive. We've been on for an hour and 8 minutes. We appreciate everybody letting us know where you're from, engaging with us. It was fun. I'm still getting used to StreamYard, which I'm using to stream this. So there was some issues there here and there, especially when I muted myself, but I don't think there are any real questions.
Well, hopefully that means we did a great job, Hank.
Yeah, and if you're looking for an email service provider, let us know. We have the 4 brands: iContact, Campaigner, Communicator, and also SMTP if you just need transactional emails, or if you have your own system that you want to plug in an SMTP server to. And there goes my dogs. All right, so I think that makes it complete. Brendan, I appreciate you being on today, and informing us all about deliverability. Actually, Judy Dodd has a question. Are there ready to go forms on eye contact that can be customized? For instance, a welcome, thanks for purchase. So we have forms. You can highly customize them with our drag and drop editor. And then also what you could do is with iContact Pro, if you're not a Pro customer, if you enable Pro, you can build a landing page and you can actually use that as your thank you page. Or if you have the way to host a page on your website, you could direct people there for that. I don't know if that's exactly what you were talking about, but also you can use automation to say you had a Shopify store or Magento or whatever, and you integrated it with, say, iContact or any provider. Most times they're going to have automation that you can also send out a thank you email right away to thank people for making that purchase, and then try to sell them that trickle charger. But Judy, if you have any specific questions, reach out to me, and I'd be happy to talk to you one-on-one about that. I believe tomorrow, Friday, I'm having one of my coffee talks. That's a little more intimate. That's going to be on Zoom. So you'd register. I'll send you a link. We could talk one-on-one and share what kind of coffee we're drinking. I actually have Mickey. Mickey was actually struggling with working from home today, but he gave me some coffee, and we're all good. That's it. Appreciate it. Thank you, Tim, for coming on. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Lori. And I don't know if Sherry, if you're still on, but thank you all. And with that, we're going to bid you adieu.
Stay safe and healthy, everybody.
Yes. All right. So the broadcast is ending. That was pretty cool.